Good morning. Got a couple of minutes before 11, so we'll sit here for just a few minutes and let everybody get logged on before we finish our book. Don't forget, we have a Zoom call at 12 o'clock. If I had your email or your parents' email, you guys should have gotten a notice. So that'll be at 12 o'clock today. And as you can see, I'm in our classroom today. Busy up at Grandview for end of the year stuff. I know you wouldn't think we would be, but good morning. It's pretty busy right now, wrapping everything up. So about 2 more minutes, so we'll give everybody time to get logged on, and I'll check this plethora of emails and texts before I start reading. Okay. So for those of you that weren't on yesterday, this is my original Pinballs book that I think I was either 9 or 10 when I got this. And as you can see, it was $1.25 from Scholastic, and I put my little name on it there. But you can see the difference in the cover artwork, okay? When they reprint books, that sometimes will change the cover art so that it'll be more appealing in today's days and times. You know what I'm saying? You want to be appealing in the moment for people who want to buy your book. So, anywho, okay, well, it's almost 11. We're going to finish our book today. I thought it had 24 chapters, but it has 26. But I think chapter 26 is about 3 pages. So 25, same. So we will finish it today. And today is our official last day of the regular school year. It's been weird, right? So very strange way to end the year. Remember, if any of you guys have library books or any personal items that belong to teachers, bring them through the line on Monday. Look, I washed this with something fuzzy and it is all over me. Funny. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. Good morning. Okay, we've been reading Pinballs. We've got Carly and Harvey and Thomas J. Those are our main characters. And they're staying at the Masons foster home for one reason or another that happened in their own lives. So you've got Carly, who got into an argument with her stepdad. You've got Thomas J., who was discovered living with the Benson twins, and he had just kind of come up their drive. And then you've got Harvey, whose dad accidentally ran over his legs after he'd been drinking. All right, so let's see how it turns out. Chapter 18. The remaining Benson twin lay with her eyes closed. I forgot. Thomas J. and Mr. Mason are going to visit the remaining Benson twin because the other one passed away. Okay, so let's start over. Chapter 18. The remaining Benson twin lay with her eyes closed. Thomas J. stood by her hospital bed, waiting respectfully for her to open her eyes. It was a good feeling to have Mr. Mason behind him, now that he knew Mr. Mason had once long ago stood in front. There was another woman in Jefferson's bed. She was flipping through a movie magazine looking for a good article. Finally, Thomas J. gave up and said, "Aunt Benson?" One of her eyes snapped open. The other opened slowly. "It's me, Thomas J." "Thomas J?" "Yes'm, the boy that lived with you for so long?" Her eyes focused on him. "Thomas J?" she said. "Sister's gone." Her voice, which had not been steady since 1945, wavered more than usual. She reached out her hand and he took it. "I know." Mr. Mason leaned over Thomas J.'s head. He put his hands on Thomas J.'s shoulders. "I brought him from the funeral, ma'am. He wanted to pay his respects." "Sister and me had always planned a double funeral," she said. We always said we was born together, we'd die together. When we broke our hips together, I was sure of it. Well, Mr. Mason said, it just looks like you're going to have to stick around for a while and get the garden back in shape. Unless, she said, I can manage to die before. She broke off and made a feeble attempt to lift her head. Feeble means like it was really hard. Okay, feeble, you're weak. When's the funeral? 2:00, but unless I can manage to die before 2:00, she said, lying back on her pillow. It's 12:15 now, the woman in the next bed said, folding her magazine to read an article about Liz Taylor's facelift. Then I won't make it, the Benson twins said. She closed her eyes. After the funeral, Mr. Mason remembered to pick up some Kentucky Fried Chicken. It'll be a nice surprise, he said. We forgot last time, remember? I thought they were going to tar and feather us. Thomas J. nodded. Harvey will be pleased. He moved closer to Mr. Mason on the car seat. He felt Mr. Mason's arm against his. He looked up at Mr. Mason. Suddenly, Thomas J. felt like somebody out of a book, a fairy tale, who had just stepped into the real life and needed to know about it. He said to Mr. Mason, tell me some more about the things that happened to you when you were little. Carly was washing the dishes hard. There were only a few of them, so she was giving each her full attention. Mrs. Mason smiled at her and said, you don't have to wash the flowers off, too. Mrs. Mason smiled at her and, I can't help it, Carly said. Harvey's father makes me so mad. Harvey couldn't even eat his Kentucky Fried Chicken tonight. The thought of sitting across the table from him and seeing him stare at his untasted drumstick made her wash the glasses even harder. So they brought the Kentucky Fried Chicken home because they forgot the last time, and now Harvey is so sad and depressed he can't even eat it. Hey, if you don't want your chicken, I'll take it, Carly had said to get a rise out of him. At her house, a person would eat anything if he thought someone else wanted it. But it hadn't worked with Harvey. Mutely, he handed her the drumstick. She finished rinsing the glasses and dried her hands. He just looks so sad, sitting there staring out his window. And he's not pouting or sulking or anything. He's just sitting there. I know. You know, if they made a target of him of the way he looked from the back and they set it up on the firing range, well, nobody could shoot it. Mrs. Mason took the dishes from the drain and dried them in a slow, careful way. Carly stared at the sink. He looks like he's already been shot. Carly, Mrs. Mason said. Do you remember me telling you that I thought you could help Harvey? This was about the second day you were here. I remember. Well, you have helped him. Carly glanced at Mrs. Mason in surprise. How can anybody think he's been helped? He's worse. He's worse now at this moment. I know that. But you have helped him, Carly. Carly shook her head. Her hair fell over her face as she turned away. It's odd about helping people. When I was your age, the only person who could help me when I felt bad was my sister Liz. She could always make me laugh. My other sister Helen is more like me, serious. Now, I'm not funny at all. I don't think I've ever said a comical thing in my life. And your other things, though. Thank you, Carly, Mrs. Mason smiled. Only what I mean is that you are helping Harvey, sometimes by just making him smile or feel better. And I don't want you to give up. Carly turned to Mrs. Mason. I never give up on anybody I like, she said. Okay, so now she's come around and she's liking Harvey as a friend, and not being so mean. And I think probably too, seeing his dad and knowing what happened probably made her feel, a little bit bad for Harvey. Chapter 19. The next morning, Harvey did not get out of bed. Carly had come in several times to try and cheer him up, but nothing had worked. Now she came in again. Hey, she said, in an excited way, there's a big package for you in the closet. My birthday's this Friday, he said, staring at the upper bunk. This Friday? You didn't tell me that. Now I'll have to get you something. What do you want? Name anything under 15 cents and it's yours. He didn't answer. Hey, I got an idea. Look, why don't you go ahead and open up your package now? Mrs. Mason won't care and it'll cheer you up. No. Well then, it might cheer me up. I'm beginning to feel lousy too. Want me to open it for you? No. I don't mean open it all the way. I just mean peek at it. I can slip off the paper so carefully you wouldn't even know I had opened it. I do it all the time at Christmas. Go ahead if you want to. You mean it? You wouldn't mind? No. Woohoo! I love opening presents. I don't even care whether they're mine or not. She went to the hall closet and slid out the box. It's a big one, she called to Harvey. The bigger the better, I always say. She pulled off the ribbon, which was punched into the top of the box. With great care, she undid the strips of Scotch tape. She opened the end. When she saw that it was a portable color television set, her breath eased out in one long sigh. Okay, you have to understand this was written in the 70s. And color TV, I think maybe had been around 20 years, maybe. And portable doesn't mean real small. It's probably kind of big, but portable means you can carry it around. Okay. Oh, wow, she called to Harvey. You're really going to like this. Carefully, she retaped the paper, punched the bow back in the original hole, and slid the box back into the closet. Then she went back to Harvey's room and leaned against the bed. Guess what it is, she said. A TV. What? A TV. She was startled. She tried to bluff. What makes you think it's a TV? I saw my father carrying it in. Well, I'm not saying whether it is or isn't, she said. She was disappointed. She loved to make people guess things. She had been looking forward to a long session with Harvey. He would say, Is it something useful? She would say, yes. Is it different colors? Definitely yes. Does it move? Well, it doesn't, but something about it does. Now the game was ruined. She glanced down at Harvey, and he looked so miserable that she forgave him. She knelt by the bed. You know, if you really want me to, I'll go to that farm in Virginia, Harvey, and get your mother. No. But I wouldn't mind, really. I could make a hammock or two while I'm there, bring you one for your birthday. No. She got serious. Look, Harvey, if your mother knew that you had these broken legs and that your father did it, she'd come get you. I know she would, and No. Well, I can go if I want to, Harvey. You can't stop me. No. The word was so agonized, which means in pain, that Carly stepped back from the bed. She stayed without speaking for a moment. Then she stepped forward. Oh, look, she said. I got some little decals and put them on my fingernails. Did you notice? That'd be like stickers for your fingernails. That's what a decal is. She waved her fingers in front of Harvey's face. He closed his eyes. I saw them. Want me to put some on your toenails? No. Just on your big toenails then. Oh, come on. It'll be fun. She yanked down the sheet. People always look at your legs because they stick out, and the decals would be a nice touch. Give them a smile. What would you rather have, flowers or little black poodles? No. Carly bent closer. She looked at his feet. Hey, wait a minute, she said. Did you know your right toes are redder than your left ones, and they're all swollen? I don't care. They look terrible. Doesn't your leg hurt? No. It does too. I'm getting Mrs. Mason. I'm fine. Carly ran from the room. Mrs. Mason, come look at Harvey's toes. I'm no nurse yet, but I know bad-looking toes when I see them, and these are bad-looking toes. Chapter 20. Carly and Thomas J. were sitting on the front steps waiting for Mrs. Mason and Harvey to get back from the hospital. I knew there was something wrong as soon as I saw those toes, Carly was saying. I didn't see them, but I knew something was wrong. I hope they just have to give him a shot or some pills. His birthday's Friday. I don't know when my birthday is, Thomas J. said. Well, mine's August 7th, and don't forget it. That's just 3.5 weeks away. I won't forget. Even if I'm gone, you send me something. I'll be glad to. And I'll make you up a birthday. You can have the same day as me if you want, August 7th. All right. The thought of his own birthday made him smile to himself. And how old do you want to be? 8? 9? 9 sounds good. 9 it is. She looked up the street. I wonder what's keeping them. It's been 2 hours. Even I could give a shot in less than 2 hours, and I haven't even had nurses training yet. Maybe he'll have to stay in the hospital like the Benson twins. Thomas J.'s good feeling about having a birthday and being 9 left him. Well, if he does, I sure hope they take better care of him. One of them died. I know. When I get to be a nurse, none of my patients are going to die. I'm going to make it real clear, no dying. I'll get to be like a good luck nurse. People will ask for me, especially real sick people, because they'll know my number one rule, no dying. She got to her feet. Here they come. Oh, it's only Mrs. Mason. She ran to the driveway. Where's Harvey? They're keeping him in the hospital. The leg's infected. Is it bad? It's pretty bad, Carly. And the worst thing is that he just doesn't seem to care. It's that father of his. When I get my driver's license, I'm going looking for him. Now, Carly. Well, Harvey's been like that ever since his father came for that stinking visit. The man's got problems, Carly. Sure, the man's got problems. Everybody's got problems, only they don't run over their kids' legs because of them. She turned to Thomas J. We'll go see him right after supper and cheer him up. I'm not very good at that sort of thing, Thomas J. said, recalling his failure with the Bensons. Well, you better get good at it pretty quick. I am not going to have Harvey lying up there in misery with his birthday this Friday. I was planning to bake him a cake. You can still bake the cake and take it to the hospital, Mrs. Mason said. It won't be the same. A birthday away from home is bad enough, but a birthday in the hospital? Whoa, my birthday's coming up in 3.5 weeks, and I better be home for it. I better get a floating opal, too. She started for the kitchen. Oh, and Thomas J.'s birthday is the same as mine, isn't it, Thomas J.? Yes. And he's going to be 9, aren't you, Thomas J.? Yes, 9, he said firmly. He followed her into the kitchen. So Thomas J., tottering up the drive to the Benson twins' house, they would have no idea when his birthday is. So that's going to probably be a mystery until, I don't know, we'll see. Chapter 21. Harvey was in a room by himself. He was, as Carly had known he would be, staring up at the ceiling. When Carly and Thomas J. entered, they bumped into each other. They had known he would look bad, but not that bad. Well, look who's come to visit you, Carly said. Harvey turned his head to them. There was no expression on his face, but his lips were in a straighter line than usual. How you feeling, Carly asked, coming closer. All right. Want me to roll up your bed, she asked. I'd love to do that. When I get to be a nurse, I'm going to spend all my time rolling people up and down. No thanks. Oh, well. Want a drink of water then? Look, Thomas J., they have special straws that bend. The Benson twins had those. Carly shot him a look. Want a drink, Harvey? No. Well, can I have one then? I haven't got anything catching. As she bent to drink, she suddenly straightened. Hey, I'm going to have a surprise for you on your birthday. I'm not telling you what it is, but I'm making it myself. She paused, waited, then asked, Want to guess? No. Okay, I'll give you a hint. This thing I'm giving you is very useful, and it's also a thing of great beauty. Go ahead, try and guess. Harvey was silent. Ask me questions. Come on. Ask things like, what color is it? What color is it? Ah, the guessing is underway. The colors are black and white and pink and yellow. She nudged Thomas J. and grinned. Thomas J. looked so puzzled that she leaned down and whispered, It's a chocolate cake with white icing, pink candles, and yellow flames. Now don't give it away. She stood at the foot of the bed waiting. Harvey was looking at the ceiling. I don't think he's going to guess, Thomas J. said. Carly said, Well, if you really don't want to guess, we'll just wait and let it be a surprise. She moved around the bed. Oh, guess what happened today? This was so stupid. The phone rang and I picked it up and said, Hello. And this girl's voice said, Hi, how are you? Sorry. Hi, how are you? I said, Oh, I'm fine. How are you? And she said, Fine. What you doing? I said, Nothing much. How about you? She said, Watching TV, only nothing good's on. I said, It never is. Then there was a real long pause, and she said in a kind of funny voice, I think maybe I've got the wrong number. Is this Marcy? I said, No, it's Carly, and we hung up. I should have known nobody in this town would call me. Wasn't that the stupidest thing? I almost died. Harvey didn't answer. So she's trying anything she can do to make him happy. That's what she's trying to do here. Thomas J. cleared his throat and said, Mr. Mason's going to take me fishing. And you too, Harvey, as soon as your legs get well, Carly said. Although, if it was me and I knew I'd have to go fishing when I got cured, I'd probably just stay in the hospital. There was a pause, and then Carly said, "Hey, did I show you my decals?" She held out her hands and let them drop. "Oh, yeah, I did. Anyway, I'm glad you got to see them this afternoon, because when I was making peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwiches for me and Thomas J., I dropped some mayonnaise on my nails and the decals melted." In all the years I've read this book, you guys, I've never had anybody try peanut butter and mayonnaise, and I'm not going to be the first one because that just sounds gross. There was another silence. Carly was still trying to think of something to say when the nurse put her head in the door. "Visiting hours are over." "But we just got here," Carly protested. "You can come back tomorrow." "Just give me 5 more minutes," Carly begged. She could not bear to leave without cheering Harvey up. She looked at him. His face was still turned to the ceiling. She wanted to say something funny. She wanted to make Harvey laugh out loud. "Thomas J.," she said through her teeth. He shrugged helplessly. Carly knew she was on her own. She tried to think of something funny that had happened to someone else, then she could turn it around and say it happened to her. She did that all the time, but now her mind was blank. "Well, we better go," she said. She leaned over the bed. "Listen, everything will be all right," she said. "I promise it will." Then she turned to Thomas J. and said, "Come on, the nurse will be chasing us out of here with hypodermic needles in a minute." They walked down the hall and out in front of the door of the hospital. "Well, Thomas J., you and me are failures at being cheerer-uppers." "I always have been," he said. "Well, I haven't. I expected better of myself." Carly pulled her shoulders back. "Listen, all night you think of funny things to say and talk about, and I'll do the same. Tomorrow will be funny enough to go on Hollywood squares." "I won't." She turned and grabbed him by the shoulders. "Listen, tomorrow we are going to say funny things, and I mean it, right?" "Right," Thomas J. answered. Chapter 22. It was Thursday night, and Harvey was worse. Now he wouldn't even speak to anyone. The nurses had started feeding him through a tube in his arm. Harvey's father had come on Wednesday and sat with him for over an hour. He had told the doctors in a loud voice that money was no object. He told them they could spend whatever they had to and he would foot the bill. He said he had just gotten a contract to build an 8-unit townhouse. "We're doing all we can now," one of the doctors had answered. Carly was furious when she heard about it. "You mean they let that rotten bum come in Harvey's room?" "It's his father, Carly." "Woohoo, the next thing you know, they'll be letting germs and viruses in." That night, when everyone was in bed at the Mason house, Carly got up. She slipped into Thomas J.'s room and shone a flashlight in his face. "You asleep?" He put his hand up to block out the light. "No, I was just lying here thinking." "About Harvey?" "Yeah. I'm used to him being on the bottom bunk and shifting around and all. I can't get to sleep without him. It's too quiet." "Me either. Now listen, I got an idea. You want to go in cahoots with me?" So, like, go in together on something. Thomas J. wasn't sure what that was, but he said, "I'd be glad to." "All right, look, I went through the newspaper after supper, and guess what I found in the ads?" "What?" "Look, it's right here." She shone the light on the folded newspaper. "Can you read it?" Thomas J. bent closer to the paper. Carly was too impatient to wait for his eyes to focus. She read it herself. "Puppies free to good homes." "Puppies?" "Yeah, Thomas J., we're going to go right over there first thing in the morning and get Harvey a puppy." Thomas J. couldn't seem to take it in. "A puppy?" "Yeah, he's always wanted one, remember? It was the first thing on his list, and it'll cure him, Thomas J. I know it will." "Why, if I was in the hospital half dead and somebody hooked a floating opal around my neck, I'd get up and do the hula." She broke off. "And the best part is they're free. See, free to good homes." "But is this a good home?" "If it's good enough for us, it's good enough for a dog, isn't it?" "What about Mrs. Mason, though? She might get mad." "I'll take all the responsibility. I'm used to people being mad at me. It doesn't bother me a bit. I'll say I forced you to come with me and—" "No, I want to come on my own. She can get mad at me, too." "All right, then. After breakfast, we'll go over to Woodland Circle, wherever that is, and we'll take a shopping bag. See, we'll have to sneak him into the hospital. and we'll pick out a puppy and take him over to the hospital and pull him out and sing happy birthday to you. How does that sound? It sounds good to me. I know it'll cure him. I mean, who's going to lie there staring up at the ceiling when a puppy is licking his face? It just can't be done. What if the puppy doesn't lick him, though? We'll pick one that will. After all, there are bound to be how many puppies in a litter? 6, 7? There's bound to be one that licks. At the door, she paused and said, not a word of this to Mrs. Mason, you hear me? Yes, or Mr. Mason. Carly sensed the bond that had grown between them. There was a pause and then, all right, see you in the morning. So that is an excellent idea. You know, he's always wanted a puppy and never did get one. So we'll see how this goes. Chapter 23. Carly and Thomas J. walked slowly down the hospital hall with the shopping bag between them. I wish he wasn't such a wiggler, Carly said, looking straight ahead. That's why you picked him, because he was the liveliest one. I know, but I feel like we got a tiger in there the way the bag's shaking. I'm afraid he's going to bust out the bottom. If he wets, I know he will. Don't even think such things, Carly said. And remember, every time you see a nurse, get in front of the bag. Nurses are known for their sharp eyes. Doctors aren't. We could bring an elephant in here and the doctors wouldn't notice. Thomas J. and Carly went straight to Harvey's room. Shut the door, Carly said quickly. She ran over to Harvey's bed. He was staring at the ceiling. Hey, it's just me, Carly. You can look at me in safety. I'm not wearing one of my famous halters. He turned his eyes to see her. I lied. She grinned. I've got on my shocking pink one, your favorite. Before he could look back at the ceiling, she said, Hey, we brought you something. Harvey didn't speak. And I'm not even going to make you guess what it is. I'm just going to tell you that it is fat, spotted, wiggly, that it has a tail and a pink nose, and that it is dying to get out of this shopping bag. She reached down and brought up the puppy. Ta-da! Puppy time! Carly nudged Thomas J. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Harvey. Happy birthday to you. There was a silence. Thomas J. said, We wanted to get a white one so we could name him Snowball, but they all had spots on them. Carly set the puppy on the bed beside Harvey. She nudged him forward. Delighted to be out of the bag, the puppy rushed for the nearest face, Harvey's, and began licking his neck. Carly looked at Thomas J. and rolled her eyes upward. Thank goodness, she mouthed. Harvey didn't move. Don't you like him, Harvey? Thomas J. asked. It was the first present he had ever been in on. He wanted more than anything that it be a success. He's real nice and fat too, Thomas J. said. Feel him. Yeah, pleasantly plump is not the word, Carly said. And soft too, Thomas J. said anxiously. Harvey did not move. Thomas J. squinted up at Carly. Should we sing the birthday song again? Suddenly, Harvey lifted his hand. He laid it on the puppy. I don't think so, Carly grinned. Harvey spoke for the first time in 2 days. Is this for me? He asked. Compliments of Carly and Thomas J., Carly said. It's mine? Yeah, it's your birthday present. We picked it out special. Permanently? Sure. What kind of gifts do you think me and Thomas J. give? If we wanted to give you something unpermanent, we'd have gotten a popsicle. I can keep him? Well, yeah, sure. What else? As a matter of fact, he's unreturnable. The puppy was wiggling against Harvey's neck, and suddenly Harvey started to cry. It was the first time he had cried since the accident. It was like the turning on of a spigot, like a water faucet, that's a spigot. He sobbed and the tears rolled down his cheeks in streams. The puppy, wild with all the excitement, licked at the tears. Go ahead and cry all you want to, Carly said happily. You got your own personal crying towel now. She turned to Thomas J. When I get to be a nurse, every morning I'm going to bring a basket of puppies to the hospital with me. They're better than pills. Harvey was still crying. It just makes me feel so, he broke off. I don't know. It's just that I didn't think, I don't know how I feel, he cried again. The nurse on the floor was passing the door and heard the commotion. She stuck her head in the room. Under the covers, quick, Carly said, poking the puppy under the sheet. What's going on in here? Believe it or not, Carly said, we are having a wonderful time. The nurse kept looking at Harvey. She said, Harvey, are you all right? Yes'm. Are you laughing or crying? Both, I guess. The nurse kept standing there. She noticed the bulge under the sheet, but she decided to ignore it. This was the first time Harvey had shown any sign of life in 2 days. You want anything? She asked. No. Cokes, Carly hissed at him. Oh, yeah. Could me and my friends have a Coke? Harvey said. It's my birthday. He wiped his remaining tears on the sheet. Of course. Want to see what I got for my birthday? My friends gave it to me. Don't, Carly started to say, but Harvey reached under the sheet and pulled out the puppy before she could finish. Now, you know better than to have a puppy in here, the nurse said. Why, if I had seen that puppy, I would have to send him right out this minute. Yes'm. She smiled. I'll bring the Cokes. She started out the door and then leaned back in. And many happy returns of the day, Harvey. Thank you. As the door closed, he held up the puppy so he could get a good look now that his eyes were dry. This is the nicest puppy I have ever seen. Thomas J. and me only give the best, Carly said. There was 6 of them, Thomas J. said, but this one came running over and started licking us, and we knew it was the one for you. Carly said, listen, don't think this puppy is all you're getting for your birthday, though. I'm making my famous mayonnaise cake and bringing it over tonight. That does not sound very good. And will you bring the puppy back then, too? Listen, this puppy is not so easy to lug around, Carly said. If you want to do any real playing with him, you're going to have to get out of this hospital. I will, Harvey said, but will you bring him tonight? If, Carly said, Mrs. Mason will lend me her tote bag. So you can see this, it really did help. They really did help Harvey. Chapter 24. Well, that's what's known as a successful gift, Thomas J., Carly said. They were walking home from the hospital with the puppy between them. Yeah. Carly threw back her head and breathed in the morning air. You know, Thomas J., I just feel real good. Me too. This is probably what it feels like to be famous. Famous? Yeah. Hey, get the puppy, will you? He's going under those bushes. She waited and then said, like, one time Harvey was making up one of his lists and he was deciding how he wanted to be famous. He said that one day everybody will be famous for 15 minutes, and he was figuring out what he wanted his 15 minutes to be like. What did he decide? Thomas J. paused to pull the puppy back on the sidewalk. This is really a nice little puppy. Oh, I can't remember. I think he wanted to be an astronaut and land on the moon, something like that, or write a bestseller. Anyway, the point is, Thomas J., that this is probably what we'll feel like when we get famous. Yeah, a preview of coming attractions. Nice feeling, isn't it? I think this puppy's getting to know me. Look how he follows. Anyway, Carly went on, until I do get famous, Thomas J., 15 minutes like this every now and then will keep me going. They could see the Mason's house in the distance, and they both got silent. Excuse me. Finally, Thomas J. said, how are we going to tell Mrs. Mason what we did? How do you think we're going to do it? She snapped. Write it in the air with a sparkler? She straightened. We're going to walk in and say, look what we got Harvey for his birthday. Anyway, don't worry about it. Anybody that would take us in isn't going to turn away a puppy. I hope not. Plus the fact that Mrs. Mason has been real worried about Harvey. I heard her talking to Mr. Mason. It was like he was their real child. They were so worried. Carly opened the screen door and went into the house. She could hear the mixer going in the kitchen, so she went in and said, hey, look what we got Harvey for his birthday. She held up the puppy. She didn't sound as confident as she had when she's been outside on the sidewalk. So she was talking a big game outside to Thomas J. Well, we'll just tell her what we did. But then actually having to tell her, she was nervous. Mrs. Mason looked at the puppy. She wiped her hands on her apron. She said, now, who thought of that? I did, Carly said. She stepped a little in front of Thomas J. But I helped, Thomas J. said, accepting his part of the blame. Why, what a lovely thing to do. Mrs. Mason came over and hugged Thomas J. and Carly, one in each arm. In the curve of her arm, Thomas J. felt like a stick. He wanted to say, what a lovely thing for you to do, but he couldn't. He remembered a talk that he and Mr. Mason had had. You can't just blurt out things about love they had decided without some training. Thomas J. wished suddenly he had had some training. He thought of himself on an imaginary mother's lap. Who do you love? She would say. He would not know the answer. Well, do you love Mama? She would prompt. Yes. Then say it. I love Mama. Say it again real loud. I love Mama. Later, maybe, Thomas J. thought, with a little training from Mrs. Mason, he could learn to say something nice, even if it wasn't the word love. Mrs. Mason stepped back. We'll have to tell Harvey about the puppy. It'll give him something to look forward to. We can take a picture of him with the Polaroid and that's an instant camera. He already knows. You didn't take it to the hospital. Yes. Why, the nurses would have had a fit if they'd seen it. No, there was this one real nice nurse. I'm going to copy myself after her. And she saw it but pretended not to, Carly said. And did it perk him up? Mrs. Mason asked. Oh, yeah. He cried at first, Carly said, but it wasn't a bad sort of crying. And then he sat up. I rolled up the bed in my best professional manner, and we all had Cokes. It was a real happy occasion. Harvey needs a few of those. Later, I'm going to make my famous mayonnaise cake. It's the best thing you ever ate. You can't even taste the mayonnaise. And then I'm going to take it over. I'm going to put candles on it and silver decorates, the works. So silver decorates are like, you know, in the baking aisle, they have all the little candies and the confettis and the fun little stuff you can put on top of cakes. That's what a decorette is. And Listen, I've got an idea, Mrs. Mason said. Why don't you two go down to the grocery store? They have pet supplies there and get, a little collar and a leash, maybe a toy bone or something. And we'll wrap them up as gifts and take them over with the cake. And worm pills, Carly said. That'll be funny. Come on, Thomas J. At the door, she paused. This is going to be a really nice birthday, she grinned. Just remember, me and Thomas J have one coming up in 3 weeks, haven't we, Thomas J? Yes, Thomas J said, August 7th. Then she and Thomas J went out the door. And you can even tell just by me reading that Carly feels so much better, even just about herself, for doing something nice for someone else. So this is actually helping everybody. Chapter 25. The remaining Benson twin, Thomas, died on Monday, and it was decided that Thomas J should have a haircut before going to the funeral. In the barber shop, he felt his first sadness about her death. He had climbed up into the chair, excited at his first real haircut, and the barber had looked at him and said, "Who's been hacking at your head, son?" in an uncomplimentary way. As soon as the barber said that, Thomas J had been once again on the Benson farm with the twins clipping away at his head as if it were a bush. He had closed his eyes, lost in unhappiness. There, the twins would cry. They always finished at the same time. He never knew what he would look like until he got to the bathroom mirror. The barber had brushed him off and said, "Now you are a real nice-looking young man, if I do say so myself." Thomas J had opened his eyes, looking at the neatly trimmed boy in the mirror, the two halves the same at last. He had felt his sorrow draining from him. Now seated beside Mr. Mason in the car, he felt only pleasure in an outing with Mr. Mason. "Mr. Mason?" "What?" Thomas J paused. "What is it, Thomas J?" Thomas J wanted to bring up some problem so that Mr. Mason would say, "I know how you feel, Thomas J, because the same thing happened to me. Let me tell you about it." Only Thomas J couldn't think of a problem. "Oh, nothing," he said. He looked out the window. He saw the reflection of his own face neatly framed in the new haircut. "Did I ever tell you about the time my daddy took me to Bear Rocks and I got lost?" Thomas J turned to him, his face bright. "No." "Well, one time I was just about your age, and my dad got the idea that we should." Thomas J and Mr. Mason stood looking at the Benson twin in her coffin. She was wearing her good black dress and her cameo pin, the same outfit her sister had worn. Thomas J was glad about that. Mr. Mason put one hand on Thomas J's shoulder. "You know, Thomas J, they thought they were doing you a kindness when they took you in. You should always remember that." Thomas J looked up at Mr. Mason. "They were doing me a kindness." Mr. Mason nodded. "I'm sure they thought so." Thomas J looked back at the Benson twin, now dead at age 88. She actually resembled the president for whom she had been named. "I'll remember," Thomas J said. "Well, Thomas J is off to another funeral," Carly said as she settled on the foot of Harvey's hospital bed. "It's a good thing they weren't triplets." Harvey was lying with the head of his bed rolled up. "How's my dog?" Every time he mentioned his dog, he felt good. He had even told his father when he came home for a visit, "I have a dog now," he said, looking right into his father's eyes. All his father said was, "That's all right." Remember, his dad was really opposed to him getting a dog. "Oh, your dog's fine," Carly said. "He went on the paper 2 times yesterday." "You know, Harvey, you're beginning to look like yourself again." "Too bad I can't look like somebody else, huh?" "No, I like the way you look." "Hey, wait a minute. I've got an idea. Comb your hair down in bangs." "No, but I think you'd look good in bangs. And then push your glasses up on top of your head, Hollywood style, like this." That's what she's talking about. "I can't see without my glasses." "Well, I'll tell you how you look. Come on." There was a pause while Harvey brushed his hair over his forehead. "Now put your glasses on your head." Carly looked at him with her head to one side. "Harvey," she said. "What?" "Put your glasses back on your face and your hair back on your head." With a faint smile, he brushed back his hair and put on his glasses. "And one other thing, Harvey." "What?" "Promise me you won't ever try to look like anybody but yourself again." Harvey smiled. "I promise." Chapter 26. Carly and Thomas J. were sitting on the steps of the elementary school building. The puppy was lying at their feet, resting from the walk. A fly landed on him, and he twitched his ear to shake it off. The fly walked onto his forehead. The puppy raised his head and snapped at the fly. He watched as it flew away. Then he went back to sleep. Carly looked at Thomas J. "Thomas J., this is where you'll go to school at the end of the month," she said. "In this building?" He looked around. "Yeah, Harvey and me will go over on Oak Street. Harvey swears he can help me pass math, but I don't know." "I'll be glad to go to this school." "I'd like to go to nurse's school. The last school I went to was mostly made up of snobs. If you didn't have a certain kind of shoes or a certain kind of clothes, which I never had, nobody would speak to you." They sat in silence for a moment. Thomas J. was still looking back in admiration at his school. Carly reached out and rocked the puppy with her bare feet. "You know, Thomas J.," she said, "wouldn't it be nice if we could get to our brains with an eraser?" "What?" He looked at her puzzled. "Did you say eraser?" "Yeah, I just mean that there are things I don't like to remember. Oh, like times people snubbed me at school, times people made me feel bad. And if I could just erase those things, Thomas J., I'd be a lot happier. Wouldn't you like to have a brain as perfect as a melon, no bad spots at all?" "I don't have enough to remember," Thomas J. said. Carly looked at him. "Can't you remember your mother at all?" "No. Well, sometimes when I see a woman who's kind of fat, no, not fat, kind of plump, no, just the kind of woman who looks like, well, if you climb up in her lap, well, you would be very comfortable." "Oh, so every time I see a woman like that, she has on a flower dress, well, it makes me want to go over and stand beside her." "You probably had a mother who had a comfortable lap and wore a flowered dress." "Yeah." Carly was still looking at him. "I could make you up a mother, Thomas J.," she said, "like I made up your birthday." Thomas J. hesitated. He was tempted. In his mind, the picture of the woman in the flowered dress sharpened. He could almost see her. Then abruptly, he shook his head. "But I wouldn't mind," Carly went on. "I know, but I have a real mother," he said, "somewhere." "Me too, somewhere," Carly said, only she couldn't care less. Thomas J. looked at her in surprise. He said, "I can imagine somebody not wanting me, but I can't imagine anybody not wanting you." She looked at him. "Thomas J., that was a real nice thing for you to say." "Thank you." A smile came over his face. "Anyway, Thomas J., when you get older, you can find your mother. Being pinballs is just a stage we're going through," and he squinted at her. "I don't know what pinballs are. You never played a pinball machine? Well, I'll take you to this place in town I know and we'll play." She looked up abruptly. "No, I take that back, Thomas J." "About me finding my mother?" he asked. "No, I really think you can do that." "About us playing pinballs?" "No, about us being pinballs. That's what I was wrong about. You see what I'm talking about. When you play the game, you'll see what I'm talking about when we play the game. We are not pinballs," she grinned. "Don't ever let anybody call you a pinball, Thomas J." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, nothing. It's just that pinballs can't help what happens to them, and you and me can. See, when I first came here, all I thought about was running away. Only I never did. She looked at Thomas J. I know that doesn't sound like much, but it was me deciding something about my life. And now I have decided that when I go to this new school, I'm really going to try. And you're really going to try too, aren't you? He nodded. And as long as we're trying, Thomas J., we are not pinballs. They looked at each other. The fly had started bothering the puppy again, and he snapped at it. He got to his feet and looked around for something to chew. He stumbled over Carly's feet and grabbed Thomas J.'s sock. He began to tug. Carly stood up. It's time to go. Yes, Thomas J. said. He unhooked the puppy's teeth from his sock and got to his feet. Let's go home. That's the end of the book. And so you kind of have to infer what happens after that. I always like to infer that the Masons adopted Thomas J., because they didn't have children of their own. And obviously, nobody knows who his parents are. And maybe Carly, I'm not sure. Harvey probably went home to his dad, hopefully. And maybe they all lived happily ever after. I don't know. Anyway, that's the end of that book, guys. I've enjoyed reading to you online. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. For those of you that I had email for, remember, 12 o'clock. So in just a little over 15 minutes. I love you guys. Have a great summer. I miss you so much. And remember, you can still come through on Mondays for food and stuff. And you'll get robocalls about what we're doing on Mondays, okay? I love you guys. Have a good weekend.